The night he threw her out, the moon itself seemed to hide behind the clouds as if ashamed of what it was witnessing. Rain hammered against the earth when Zinla, her weakened leg trembling beneath her, clung to the doorway for balance. Mandla's face was twisted with cold disgust as he shoved her suitcase into the storm. "I'm done carrying your dead weight," he spat, his voice slicing through her like a blade. She staggered forward, the world spinning, her heart breaking not because he no longer loved her, but because he never truly had. Lightning flashed, revealing the truth in her eyes, a truth Mandla never cared to uncover. For tonight, he believed he had rid himself of a burden. He had no idea he had just cast away the sole heir to a $2 billion empire. And fate never forgets moments like this. Before we dive deeper into this story, share your location and what time it is, where you're watching from, and if you enjoy powerful African folktale dramas like this, feel free to subscribe to the channel for more inspiring stories. Mandla had not always been the monster he had become. At least, that was what Zinla used to tell herself on the nights when the pain in her leg throbbed like a memory refusing to fade. In the early days of their marriage, he had been charming, too charming. Her father once warned, ambitious, driven, and hungry for a life he believed he deserved. At first, Zinla admired that hunger. She thought it meant he was a man with vision, a man who would build a future with her. She never imagined that one day, that hunger would devour everything good in him, including the love he claimed to have. Their small home had become a cage long before he pushed her out into the storm. Arguments echoed through the rooms like nightly rituals. Mandla complained about everything: the bills, the food, the state of the house, the limp in her step, the way she breathed as though even her existence irritated him. He had a talent for making cruelty sound like logic. "If you hadn't gotten hurt," he would say, pacing the living room like an animal locked in restlessness, "we wouldn't be drowning right now." The accident had changed everything. Zinla could still feel the coldness of the metal frame collapsing beneath her at the construction site where she volunteered. One moment she was leading a charity inspection. The next, she woke in a hospital bed, unable to move her left leg properly. Months of therapy gave her some mobility back, but the limp remained, a constant reminder of the day fate took a turn. But Mandla did not see the courage in her recovery. He only saw the flaw. He accused her of being careless, of ruining their future with her recklessness. The first time he said it, she cried for hours. The 10th time he said it, she cried silently. By the 20th time, she stopped crying altogether, not because the pain was gone, but because the tears had dried into resignation. The change in Mandla had been gradual at first. He came home later, claimed he had more meetings. He became secretive with his phone, stepping outside whenever it buzzed. Zinla noticed, but she told herself, marriage required patience. She tried harder, cooked his favorite meals, ironed his shirts perfectly, even when her leg ached from standing too long. But kindness cannot heal a heart that chooses cruelty. The emotional abuse grew thicker, crawling into every corner of their life. He mocked the way she walked, sometimes subtly, sometimes openly. When guests visited, he pretended to be the loving husband. But as soon as the door closed behind them, he became a storm ready to swallow her whole. "You embarrassed me today," he snapped once after a dinner gathering. "Dragging your foot like that. People pity us because of you." Zinla remembered standing there, gripping the edge of the kitchen counter, as if it were the only thing keeping her upright. She whispered, "I'm trying my best." "Your best," he said with a laugh colder than winter, "is the reason we are stuck." She learned to shrink her presence. She moved quietly, spoke softly, avoided confrontation. She forced herself to believe that if she changed enough, if she diminished herself enough, Mandla might find his kindness again. She was wrong. Every piece she surrendered only made more room for his contempt. One evening, she caught him laughing loudly on the phone in the living room, a sound she had not heard in so long that it startled her. Peeking from the hallway, she saw his smile, the kind that used to be reserved for her, and her chest tightened. "Baby," he said into the phone, a softness in his voice she hadn't heard in months. You make everything worth it." Her heart cracked quietly in her chest. She didn't need to hear the rest. She didn't need to see his phone screen light up with the name Ayanda to understand. The truth had been standing in front of her for months. She simply hadn't allowed herself to look at it directly. That night, dinner sat untouched. Mandla didn't bother explaining. He didn't care whether she knew. In his mind, she had already become irrelevant. As the days passed, he grew bolder in his indifference. He forgot her doctor appointments, never asked about her pain, criticized everything she did, and made decisions without consulting her. When she tried to speak, he dismissed her with a wave of his hand. "Honestly, Zinla," he muttered once, when she asked if they could talk, "I can't keep carrying you emotionally and financially. You used to be useful. Now look at you. Useful." The word dug into her like a thorn. She wasn't naive. She knew he was pulling away, that he no longer saw her as a wife, but as a weight around his neck. She felt the distance, cold and growing, but she continued to give him the benefit of the doubt. Even when her heart begged her to stop, she often sat alone in their bedroom, staring at her cane resting against the wall, wondering if Mandla was right. Was she a burden? Was she the reason their finances struggled? Was her existence ruining his life? Her father's voice echoed in her memory. "A man who loves you will not love you less when you stumble. He will stand beside you until you rise again." Mandla had stepped away the moment she stumbled. The day everything shattered completely. Mandla came home furious, slamming the door so hard the walls shook. He accused her of misplacing an important file he needed for a major deal. She tried to explain she had never touched his things, but he was beyond reason. His voice rose, each word a bullet. "You're nothing but a hindrance. I should have listened when people warned me not to marry someone beneath me." She froze, the words hitting deeper than any slap could. "Mandla, I've stood by you through everything." "Then stand aside now," he growled. "I'm done pretending." That night, she realized something had died long ago. The man she married. She went to bed with silent tears staining her pillow, praying for strength, praying for clarity, praying for anything that would lift the weight, crushing her heart. But clarity arrived in the form of pain. The next morning, Mandla stood at the foot of the bed, suitcase in hand. Not hers. "Pack your things," he said coldly. "I want you gone by tonight." She stared at him, breath caught in her chest. Where will I go?" "Not my problem." For the first time in a long time, she felt fear, a deep, sinking fear. Her leg trembled as she sat up, reaching for her cane. "Mandla, please, don't do this. We can fix things. I still love. Save it," he snapped. "I don't want to hear another excuse." She looked into his eyes, searching desperately for the man she once loved, but all she saw was a stranger who had already replaced her in both heart and life. A stranger who believed he deserved better. A stranger who would soon learn what it truly meant to lose everything. Zinla's childhood home stood at the end of a long, tree-lined driveway, hidden from the world like a jewel guarded by nature itself. As she approached the tall iron gates, leaning heavily on her cane, her breath trembled not from exhaustion, but from the emotional weight pressing against her chest. She had not returned here in years, not since the day she married Mandla against her father's cautious wishes. She remembered the last conversation she had with him, a blend of blessing, concern, and unspoken fear. He had known something she did not. He had always known. The guard stationed at the entrance caught sight of her through the security camera. There was a moment of hesitation, then the gate slowly opened, creaking softly in the early evening air. She stepped through, unsure of how she would be received. Though this was her home, she felt like a stranger returning from a battlefield, broken, weary, and uncertain whether she deserved a place within its walls anymore. A familiar figure hurried down the steps, a woman with silvered hair tied neatly behind her head, her posture stiff but her eyes warm. It was Manandi, the housekeeper who had served the family for decades. When her gaze landed on Zinla, her hands flew to her mouth, and tears welled up instantly. "Child!" she cried, rushing toward her. "Oh, my sweet child, what happened to you?" The embrace that followed was warm, grounding, and painful all at once. Zinla felt herself exhale, a long, shaking breath she had been holding for months. She clung to Manandi like the last piece of a world she thought she'd lost forever. I'm all right," she whispered, though it was far from the truth. As they entered the mansion, its grandeur wrapped around her like a forgotten memory, polished marble floors, towering chandeliers, family portraits lining the walls. Every step echoed with the ghosts of her past. She remembered running through these halls as a child, her father chasing her playfully, her mother calling after them with mock frustration. She remembered laughter. She remembered life before pain. Her father, Thabani, entered the foyer moments later. He was older now, his beard peppered with silver, his posture slightly more stooped, but his presence was still commanding. When he saw his daughter, he froze. Not because he didn't recognize her, but because the sight of her stirred emotions he had fought hard to bury. "Zinla," he whispered. The way he said her name, soft, disbelieving, wounded, broke something in her. She lowered her gaze, ashamed, until he crossed the distance between them and wrapped his arms around her. "You should have come sooner," he murmured. "You should never have suffered alone." His embrace was strong, steady, unwavering. It felt like a promise she had long forgotten, that no matter where she went or what choices she made, she would always have a home here. When they moved to the living room, Manandi brought tea, though none of them touched it. The air was thick with unspoken questions. Zinla knew she owed her father the truth, but speaking it felt like peeling away layers of her own wounds. "It was Mandla," she finally said, her voice barely audible. He changed. After the accident, he blamed me for everything. He pushed me away. Tonight, he threw me out." The fury that flickered across her father's face was immediate, sharp, and terrifying. "He dared lay hands on you. He dared treat my child with such cruelty." Zinla shook her head. "He did not hit me, but his words, his rejection." Her voice cracked. "It shattered me more than any blow could." Thabani leaned forward, taking her hands gently into his. "Listen to me, my daughter. No man who truly loves you will turn his back on you when you are wounded. A man's honor is revealed, not when life is easy, but when it demands sacrifice." She nodded, tears slipping down her cheeks. "I thought if I tried harder, he might love me again," she confessed. "But I see now. He never loved me at all." Her father's expression softened, grief replacing anger. "You believed in the goodness of a man who did not deserve your heart. That is not your failure, Zinla. It is his." There was silence then, heavy but healing. After a long breath, Thabani stood. "There is something you must know, something you should have been told long ago. But I kept it from you out of fear for your safety." Zinla looked up, brows knitting in confusion. "What do you mean?" Her father gestured for her to follow. They moved down the hallway to a private study she had rarely been allowed to enter as a child. Inside, the room smelled of leather and old books. On the wall hung a portrait of her grandfather, the man who had built their empire from nothing. "You grew up believing we were comfortable," Thabani began, closing the door behind them, "but the truth is much larger than that. Our family does not simply run a successful company. We own an empire, one of the largest in the continent." He opened a drawer and pulled out a leather-bound file. Inside were documents, property deeds, investment portfolios, confidential legal papers. "This," he said quietly, "will all be yours." Her breath caught. "Mine." "Yes," he answered. "You are my only child, and long before you were born, our family decided that the inheritance would pass through the bloodline without division. You, Zinla, are the sole heir to a $2 billion estate." The room seemed to tilt. For a moment, she thought she had misheard. "But I never wanted wealth," she stammered. "I wanted a simple life. I wanted love." "Exactly," Thabani replied. "That is why we protected your identity. If the world knew who you were, men like Mandla would have courted you for your inheritance. not your heart. The truth hit her like a wave, sudden, overwhelming, heartbreaking. She had married a man who didn't love her for who she was, and she had hidden who she truly was from him. Both choices had led her to this moment. She sank into a leather chair, breathing shakily. I don't know what to feel. You feel betrayed, her father said gently. You feel hurt, but you must also feel this relief. Mandla showed his true nature before your inheritance became public. If he had known, he would have used you, controlled you, and destroyed you from the inside. Her stomach twisted. She imagined Mandla's face if he learned the truth. His greed would have consumed him. He would have worn devotion like a mask, all while plotting how to claim her wealth. Thank God he never knew, she whispered. Thabani nodded. Exactly. And now, my daughter, it is time for you to stand tall again. Time for you to reclaim your life. He handed her the file. Tomorrow, the world will learn who you truly are. You will step into your rightful position, and Mandla will disappear from your life forever. A trembling breath left her lips. But I still feel so broken, Baba. He knelt in front of her, this powerful man, bowing to comfort his child. You survived an accident that tried to take your life, he said. You survived a marriage that tried to break your spirit. You are stronger than you know. As she looked into his eyes, something inside her shifted. For months she had been drowning, her identity eroded by pain and rejection. But here, in the home where she was loved, truly loved, she felt herself resurfacing, not whole yet, but no longer lost. Tonight, she was simply a wounded woman returning home. Tomorrow, she would rise as the heir to an empire. The next morning dawned with a heavy stillness, one of those deceptive, peaceful mornings where the world seems too quiet, as if holding its breath before a storm. Mandla, however, felt no peace. He sat at his office desk, leg bouncing anxiously, eyes darting toward the clock every few minutes. He had not slept properly. His mind kept replaying the moment he shoved Zinla out into the rain, her wounded leg buckling beneath her as she hit the ground. But instead of guilt gnawing at him, the memory irritated him, like an inconvenience he wished he could erase. She'll land on her feet, he muttered to himself. Someone will take pity on her. He told himself that was enough, that he owed her nothing more. She had been slowing him down for too long, dragging her brokenness into every corner of his life. He deserved better, someone who fit beside him. Someone whose presence made him look powerful instead of pitiful. Someone like Ayanda. Just the thought of her made him sit up straighter, adjusting his tie. Ayanda was everything he believed a man like him deserved. Beautiful, flawless in appearance, ambitious, and eager to step into a life of wealth. She projected the kind of image he wanted the world to associate with him. She made him feel admired, envied, desired things Zinla had stopped making him feel. Long before the accident, he checked his phone. No messages from Ayanda yet. She was usually up early, sending flirtatious greetings before sunrise. Today, silence. He frowned. At that moment, his office door clicked open. Ayanda entered gracefully, wearing a fitted red dress that hugged her form, her hair immaculately styled, her perfume drifting through the air in a warm, seductive trail. She closed the door behind her with deliberate slowness, her smile sharp. You look tense, she said, gliding toward him. Mandla forced a smile. It's just everything going on. She sat on his lap without waiting for permission, though she had never needed it. One hand rested on his shoulder, the other tracing lazy patterns along his jawline. Well, she whispered, I have news that might make you feel better. He perked up immediately. Ayanda's news usually meant something exciting, an opportunity, a client, a chance to climb higher. But today, the glint in her eyes made him uneasy. What kind of news? He asked. She leaned back slightly, crossing her legs with calculated poise. I heard about last night. Mandla stiffened. How? How did you hear? Ayanda smiled sweetly, though her eyes were cold. Oh, darling, you forget who my friends are. Your neighbors talk. A woman being thrown out into the rain, it tends to start conversations. Mandla's throat went dry for a second, but he quickly masked it with a confident laugh. She was holding me back. I'm finally free to focus on my career. Free to focus on us. Ayanda tilted her head. On us? Yes, Mandla insisted. I thought we talked about this. We did, she said. But conversations are different from actions. Now that she's gone, what exactly are you offering me, Mandla? He blinked. Offering you. She stood up from his lap. Her expression suddenly sharpened with unmistakable ambition. You said you wanted a woman who would help you rise. A woman who matches your goals. A woman who will stand beside you as you become wealthy. And I meant all of that, Mandla said quickly. Ayanda, you know you're the one I want. But do you have anything real to offer? She asked bluntly. The question hit him like a slap. He stood, offended. I have potential. I have a promising career. I have future opportunities. Future, she interrupted, rolling her eyes, is not something I can spend, nor does it buy a home, luxury clothes, vacations, or a wedding ring. A wedding ring, he repeated, stunned. Are we talking about marriage already? Ayanda smirked. If we're not, then why did you risk your entire marriage for me? His breath caught. The truth was harsher when spoken aloud. Ayanda stepped closer, until her face was only inches from his. I'm not here to be your secret. If you want me, you need to give me a life worth having, Mandla swallowed. And I will. I just need a little time. A little time, she repeated flatly. Her gaze flickering with impatience, she turned away, walking toward the window. The morning sunlight bathed her in golden warmth, highlighting her flawless silhouette. Mandla watched her, feeling both desire and pressure coil in his chest, like two vines entangling one another. You'll see, he said firmly, without Zinla dragging me down. My career will take off. We'll have everything we ever wanted. Ayanda exhaled slowly. I hope so, she said, because I didn't come this far just to date a man with debts and dreams. He bristled. I don't have debts. She turned her head slightly. Not yet, but without your wife's steadying influence, without someone handling your home life and responsibilities. You might. Mandla felt the jab, though her tone remained deceptively calm. Ayanda finally approached him again and brushed a hand across his cheek. Prove to me that leaving her wasn't a mistake. It wasn't, he said quickly, his voice thick with desperation. I promise you, it wasn't. Ayanda nodded, satisfied for the moment, and kissed him lightly before stepping back. Good, she said, because I'm not interested in being second place in a man's life, ever. As she left the office, Mandla felt a tightness in his chest. It wasn't love, it was urgency, pressure to rise, pressure to impress, pressure to justify his choices. And beneath it all was the faintest whisper of fear. Fear that he had miscalculated. Fear that Ayanda's affection was conditional. Fear that he had sacrificed something irreplaceable for a promise he hadn't yet secured. Still, he shook off the thought. He believed in himself, believed he could turn anything around. He wasn't like those weak men who needed support from their wives. He was powerful, ambitious, destined for greatness. That afternoon, however, a troubling pattern emerged. He called 3 clients. All canceled meetings. He tried to secure a new contract he'd been chasing for months. The company informed him they were re-evaluating partnerships. He sent proposals. No replies. By midday, frustration gnawed at him. He slammed his fist against his desk. What is happening? He growled. But the day was not done punishing him. Ayanda, who had promised to meet him for lunch, sent a brief message. Something came up. We'll talk later. No explanation. No warmth. His heart thudded in his chest. Something was wrong, but nothing prepared him for what he would soon learn. That the empire he so desperately wanted to impress her with, the wealth he dreamed of possessing, the success he believed he deserved, had always been within his grasp, lying beside him every night, sleeping under the same roof, sharing the same breath. and he had thrown it into the rain like worthless debris. Long before he discovered the truth, fate had already shifted its course, moving silently toward him like a shadow preparing to swallow the careless. For days after Zinla's departure, the energy inside Mandla's home shifted into something darker, though he refused to see it that way. He moved through the rooms with a strange sense of triumph, telling himself he had finally taken control of his life. No more limping footsteps echoing behind him, no more soft questions interrupting his thoughts, no more burden weighing on his ambitions. He was free, he repeated to himself, free to become the man he was meant to be. But freedom, it seemed, had a peculiar taste, bitter around the edges, and strangely hollow in the center. The morning after Ayanda questioned his worth, Mandla arrived at the office with renewed determination. He wore his best suit, styled his hair meticulously, and carried a confident swagger meant to mask the growing anxiety beneath his ribs. He was determined to prove himself, to prove he did not need Zinla, to prove Ayanda was right to bet on him, to prove that he was still a man worthy of admiration. But the world did not shift simply because he believed it should. He barged into the conference room at 9:30 sharp, expecting to find his team reviewing the documents for the biggest contract he'd hoped to secure all year. Instead, he found silence. Desks sat empty. Computer screens were dark. The entire floor felt abandoned. He frowned. "Where is everyone?" A junior staff member peeked out from behind a door. "They've gone to speak with the board." "The board," Mandla repeated. "Without me." "Why?" They requested a private meeting," he said. The unease in the young man's eyes unsettled Mandla. "What for?" "I'm not sure," the junior whispered. But they didn't look pleased. A cold prickle crawled across Mandla's spine. He stormed to the executive floor, where 5 board members stood huddled in conversation. They fell silent the moment he approached. Their expressions were tight, too tight. "Gentlemen," Mandla said, forcing a smile, "I hope this isn't about yesterday's miscommunication. I can explain. We need the revised proposal." One board member interrupted sharply. "I sent it last night," Mandla replied defensively. "No," another corrected. "What you sent was incomplete. Missing data, missing documents, missing signatures. This is not the level of professionalism we expect." A heavy tension filled the room. "I've been dealing with personal matters," Mandla shot back, irritated. "A few files misplaced shouldn't be such a crisis." His tone was too sharp. The board exchanged glances. One member cleared his throat. "Mandla, the issue isn't just the documents." Mandla's stomach tightened. "Then what is it?" "There have been complaints," the man continued. "Clients say you've been distracted, unprepared, rushed." "That's absurd," Mandla barked. "My work has been consistent." "Not lately," the board member said firmly. "If you want this promotion, we need stability, focus, discipline, promotion." The words stung him with bitter irony. He had believed pushing Zinla out of his life would clear the path to greatness, but instead, the path was narrowing. He inhaled sharply, trying to quell the frustration building in his chest. "I will fix it," he said. "I'll refocus immediately." The men exchanged uncertain glances but nodded. "We hope so," the chairman said. "Because we are reconsidering our candidates. This could be your last chance." Their footsteps faded as they left him standing alone, the polished floor reflecting the cracks in his composure. He hurried back to his office, furious. Something was sabotaging him. It couldn't be him. He refused to believe that. He needed a scapegoat, and his mind, desperate for blame, landed on the safest target, Zinla. If she hadn't caused so much stress, if she hadn't needed so much attention, if she hadn't, his thoughts spiraled into the same poisonous place they always did, feeding the illusion that he was the victim. Lost in his anger, he didn't notice Ayanda standing at his doorway until she spoke. "You look awful." He stiffened. "It's been a long morning." She entered with a swagger of someone who felt superior to the chaos around her. Her perfume filled the office as she sat elegantly on the edge of his desk. "So," she said, crossing her legs, "are you making progress with the contract?" He hesitated. "There were a few setbacks, Ayanda's eyebrows rose. Setbacks. They're minor, he insisted quickly. I lost a document or two, but I'll fix everything. Her lips curled downward, not in sympathy but in disappointment. Mandla, she sighed. I didn't leave the possibility of dating a wealthy man to become the girlfriend of one who can't handle his job. Her words sliced through the air. I'm doing everything I can, he countered. It's not enough. Her tone was icy, graceful, unforgiving. You promised me a future, a better life, luxury, comfort. Do you think I want to stay with a man whose biggest achievement is yelling at employees? He flinched. That's not fair. No, she said, leaning closer. Then prove me wrong. Her gaze was sharp, piercing his fragile confidence. Get the contract. Get the promotion. Make money. Show me that sacrificing your marriage wasn't a foolish gamble. The words hit him in his deepest insecurity, that he was not enough on his own. He swallowed hard and nodded. I will. You'd better, she replied, because I have options. Mandla, many options. And with that, she stood, adjusted her dress, and walked out without looking back. Her rejection, mild as it was, felt like the first fracture of an earthquake gathering strength. Later that afternoon, while Mandla frantically searched through piles of papers, he discovered something that made his stomach drop. The missing file, the one that cost him the contract the board had complained about, had been deliberately moved, not misfiled, not lost, moved. He searched deeper, finding several documents rearranged or erased, digital files tampered with, email drafts missing. A suffocating realization crept over him. Someone had sabotaged him, and there was only one person who had been close enough to do it. A memory flashed Ayanda spending long hours in the office, asking for access to his computer to help organize things, complimenting his trust in her. He remembered her delicate fingers hovering too long over certain keys, her overly casual curiosity about his passwords. His breath quickened. Had she done this, why would she? Money, power, control. Had she set him up to fail so she could manipulate him into desperation, so he would cling to her for validation? Or worse, did she plan to leave him for a wealthier man once he crumbled? He felt sick, but instead of confronting Ayanda, the pressure inside him erupted into misdirected rage. So when he returned home that evening to retrieve the last of Zinla's belongings, he found her old scarf draped over a chair and hurled it across the room. This is your fault, he muttered, though she was nowhere near. You ruined everything before you left. His anger spiraled, building into the same destructive storm that had defined their marriage. But deep down, beneath the denial, beneath the pride, beneath the frantic lies he told himself, a small voice whispered the truth. He was the one unraveling. He was the one losing control. And Ayanda had thrown the first match onto a pile of dry regrets. But the fire had been building long before that. Tonight, it would ignite fully, and the first spark would be the moment he decided to confront Zinla not with remorse, but with blame. The storm that would end their marriage forever did not begin with thunder. It began with Mandla's growing desperation. The days following his confrontation with the board were a blur of frantic phone calls, failed attempts to recover documents, and tense exchanges with Ayanda, who had become increasingly impatient. Every moment of silence from her felt like rejection. Every setback at work felt like humiliation. And every problem, in his distorted logic, somehow traced back to the one person no longer in his home, Zinla. He returned to the house after sunset, the sky fading from orange to indigo. It should have been peaceful, but the emptiness gnawed at him. The walls echoed with a strange quiet he could not bear. He switched on the lights angrily, needing noise, needing movement, needing someone to blame. Zinla's belongings, what little she had left behind, were still there. Her shawl draped over the sofa, a pair of shoes neatly placed near the door, a small picture frame tucked into the shelf, one he had forgotten existed, a photo of their early marriage, taken before the accident. She was radiant, then smiling brightly, standing tall, eyes full of hope. He looked younger, too, naive even, Unaware of how resentment would twist him into something unrecognizable, he grabbed the photo frame and hurled it across the room. It shattered into pieces that scattered like fragments of their marriage. "It's all your fault," he muttered under his breath. "You ruined everything, and then made me the villain," his voice echoed, hollow and bitter. In that moment, his frustration reached a breaking point. He needed closure. He needed control. He needed to erase the last trace of her in his life. And so he drove. It didn't matter to him where she might have gone. It didn't occur to him that she had no relatives nearby. He never once considered her safety. All he knew was that she needed to hear what he believed, that she had caused the downfall of his ambitions, that she had been an obstacle, that she had failed him. By the time he pulled up to her childhood home, a place he had never been allowed to visit, night had swallowed the sky. The mansion stood tall, illuminated by soft golden lights, guarded by 2 security officers at the gate. It was far grander than anything he had imagined. Though his anger blinded him to its significance, he strode to the gate aggressively. "Open up," he demanded. One guard stepped forward calmly. "Name and purpose." "Mandla Dlamini," he snapped. "I'm here to see my wife." The guard's expression remained neutral, but there was a subtle tightening around his eyes. "Your visit was not announced. The family is not receiving unexpected guests. My wife lives here, doesn't she?" Mandla barked. "You think you can keep her from me?" The guard lifted a brow. "Sir, Ms. Zinla is under the family's care. If you have business with her, you will need approval." "Approval?" Mandla laughed bitterly. "She's my wife. I don't need approval to speak to her." "She is no longer under your authority," the guard said firmly. "Authority." The word stabbed at Mandla's pride, igniting something volatile in his chest. "Let me in right now," he said through clenched teeth. "No, sir." That refusal, calm, firm, absolute, sent rage surging through him. Hot and reckless, he pushed forward, but the guards blocked his way effortlessly. "You will not enter," one of them said. "Ms. Zinla has requested privacy." Mandla's jaw clenched so tightly it hurt. "She requested what?" "Privacy. From me." He laughed hysterically, the sound edged with madness. "She can't decide that. She owes me explanations." Inside the house, Zinla, sitting quietly in a private room, heard the muffled shouting from the gate. Her heart stopped. She recognized that voice instantly. The one that once charmed her, the one that later crushed her, the one she had feared would follow her, even into her escape. Manandi entered the room quickly. "Child, stay inside," she urged. "Your husband, he is at the gate." Zinla froze. "He came here. Why?" "Do not worry," the housekeeper said gently, placing a protective hand on her shoulder. "Your father instructed the guards not to let him through." But fear pulsed through Zinla's veins, not fear of Mandla's anger, but fear of falling back into the trap of blame and manipulation she had just escaped. At the gate, Mandla continued shouting until the mansion's front door opened, and Thabani himself stepped outside. The guards straightened immediately, stepping aside as the patriarch approached. He walked with slow, deliberate steps, his presence imposing even from afar. Mandla inhaled sharply. He had never met Zinla's father. She had always avoided bringing him into their marital issues, but he immediately sensed the man's authority. "You are making a spectacle," Thabani said, voice deep, calm, and utterly controlled. Mandla scowled. "Who are you to interfere between a husband and wife?" "I am her father," Thabani replied, raising a brow. "And you are the man who abandoned her in the rain." Mandla flinched at the phrasing. "I did what I had to do," he snapped. "She's been ruining my life." "Ruining your life," Thabani repeated, almost amused. "That is an interesting accusation coming from someone who could not uphold even the most basic responsibility of protecting his partner." Mandla's fists tightened. "You don't understand. She was holding me back. She made everything harder." "Enough." Thabani lifted a hand. The word cut through the night like a blade. "Your disrespect ends here." "You can't speak to me like that," Mandla spat. "I'm her husband. Not anymore." The words hit him like a punch to the gut. What? Mandla whispered, suddenly unsteady. She has filed for separation, Thabani said calmly. Legal documents will be delivered to you in due time. Mandla's head spun. She can't do that. She can't just walk away. She did not walk away, the older man corrected. You threw her away. The truth of that statement staggered Mandla in a way he had not expected. For a moment, he wavered, but pride dragged him back into anger. I want to speak to her, he insisted. You can't keep her from me. You will not see her, Thabani said coolly. Not tonight, not tomorrow, not ever again unless she chooses otherwise. Mandla felt the world tilting. This is ridiculous. She's my wife. I have rights. Thabani stepped closer, his eyes piercing. You forfeited your rights the moment you pushed her into the storm. Silence fell, heavy and absolute. Then Thabani added, and know this, whatever happens next is entirely the consequence of your own cruelty. The finality of the statement sent a ripple of panic through Mandla's chest. What do you mean? Thabani did not answer. Instead, he turned and walked back toward the mansion. The guards stepped forward in unison. Leave, one said firmly. For the first time in years, Mandla stepped backward, not out of defiance, but out of fear. Something about this house, this family, this confrontation had unsettled him in a way he didn't understand. He retreated slowly, his heart pounding in his ears. As he reached his car and pulled away from the estate, he told himself they were bluffing, that Zinla was nothing without him, that she would come crawling back once she realized she couldn't survive alone. But deep inside, buried beneath layers of pride, another thought flickered. Why would her father speak with such certainty? Why did they treat him as though he had lost something far greater than a broken marriage? What was it he didn't know? And why? Why did the word consequence echo in his mind like a warning? Tonight, Mandla left the mansion with anger still burning in his veins. Tomorrow, he would learn the truth, and it would break him. The drive back to his empty home should have given Mandla time to think. But instead it filled him with a restless, festering frustration. The words of Zinla's father echoed in his head like an accusation he could not outrun. Whatever happens next is entirely the consequence of your own cruelty. Consequence. The word curled like smoke around his lungs, suffocating him with meanings he couldn't grasp. He tossed and turned that night. Unable to sleep, morning found him exhausted, disheveled and irritable. Pacing through the silent house with a gnawing sense of dread he refused to acknowledge. He told himself it was anger. Anger that Zinla had run to her father. Anger that her family had barred him from seeing her. Anger that they had dared to threaten him. But beneath the anger lay fear. Fear of losing control. Fear of losing Ayanda. Fear of losing everything. Meanwhile, on the other side of the city, Zinla awoke to soft sunlight spilling across her bed. The sheets were warm, the room peaceful, and for the first time in months, she felt safe. Her legs still ached, but the pain was bearable, nothing compared to the wounds Mandla had carved into her spirit. She sat up slowly, breathing in the familiar scent of lavender from the diffuser beside her bed. Her childhood room had been lovingly preserved by her father. Photos of her youth lined the walls, playing in the garden, performing at school events, smiling through birthdays. She had forgotten what it felt like to be cherished simply for existing. A gentle knock came at her door. "Come in," she said softly. Manandi entered with a warm smile and a tray of breakfast, fresh fruit, warm porridge, and herbal tea. "You need strength, my child," the older woman said, placing the tray on her lap. "Eat. Today will be important." Zinla frowned. "Why? What will happen today?" "A conversation," Manandi replied. "One you have avoided for too long. Your father wants to speak with you in the study." Zinla felt her pulse quicken. "About the inheritance?" "Yes," the housekeeper confirmed. "About your future?" Zinla nodded slowly. The idea still felt surreal. Her being heir to a multi-billion-dollar estate. She had been raised humbly despite the family's wealth. Her father believed in simplicity, in grounding his daughter's character before placing such power in her hands. He had succeeded. She had grown up valuing kindness, not money, loyalty, not status. That was why she had fallen for Mandla. He had seemed sincere, hard-working, someone who loved her for her heart. But she had been wrong. After breakfast, she dressed in a comfortable robe and used her cane to move slowly down the hallway. Every step reminded her of the accident, of the fragile bones beneath her skin, of the strength required to keep walking anyway. But today, she felt different. Today, she felt like she was reclaiming parts of herself Mandla had tried to extinguish. When she entered the study, her father was standing near the window, hands clasped behind his back. He turned the moment she stepped in, his eyes filled with sorrow and pride. "Sit, my daughter," he said gently. She lowered herself into the leather armchair across from him. "Are you feeling stronger today?" he asked. "A little," she said honestly. "Being home helps. I am glad." He paused, as though choosing his next words carefully. "I called our legal team last night. They are waiting for your approval to begin the necessary transitions." Zinla inhaled sharply. "Baba, I still do not understand why now." Her father sat down, leaning forward slightly. "Because you have reached a turning point. You cannot face the world as a wounded woman hiding her worth. You must rise, and that begins with accepting who you truly are." "But I don't feel ready," she confessed, fingers curling into her lap. "You are," he said firmly. "You survived betrayal, you survived humiliation. You survived a man who could not see your value. And yet here you are, breathing, standing, fighting. If that is not strength, what is?" Emotion welled in her chest. "I thought he loved me, Baba. I thought my heart would break if I lost him. And now?" her father asked gently. She hesitated, then shook her head. "Now I see. I had already lost him long before he threw me out. I was just too afraid to admit it." Her father reached across the table, taking her hand. "Fear does not make you weak, it makes you human. But rising despite fear, that is what makes you powerful." She wiped a tear from her cheek. He continued. "I know Mandla came to the gate. I heard every word he said. The man you married is not the man he is now, and he does not deserve another second of your pain." Zinla closed her eyes, remembering Mandla's accusations, his unrestrained anger, his twisted justifications. "No," she whispered. "He doesn't." Her father nodded. "Good, then we move forward." He stood and walked to the desk, retrieving a hardcover folder bound in deep blue leather. He placed it before her. "This contains the documents confirming your position as my successor, our estate, investments, properties, and the board seats of our companies. Everything will be transitioned under your authority." Zinla stared at the folder, feeling its weight like a physical force. "Baba, a $2 billion empire. How can I handle something so vast?" "You will not handle it alone," he assured her. "You will be guided, supported, protected, but the legacy is yours." Silence filled the room heavy, sacred. Then he added, "But there is something more important than wealth. This inheritance is not just financial. It is your freedom, your independence, your protection from anyone who might ever try to break you again." Zinla nodded slowly, realizing the truth. In his words, this inheritance was not a crown, it was armor. She reached for the folder, hands trembling slightly, and opened it. Inside were signatures, official seals, legal summaries, and a letter written by her father. She recognized his handwriting instantly. "My precious daughter, when the world tries to crush you, remember this. You were born to rise, not to surrender. This legacy is not a burden, it is a shield. Use it not for vengeance, but for strength. Use it not to destroy, but to rebuild. And above all, use it to carve a life where your heart will never again belong to someone unworthy of it." Tears slipped down her cheeks. "You carry the grace of your mother," her father said quietly. "She would be proud to see you become the woman you were destined to be." Zinla looked up at him, her chest tight with emotion. "Thank you for believing in me when I forgot how to believe in myself," he smiled warmly. "That is a parent's duty. As for Mandla, His tone darkened. He believes he has power over your story. He does not. He never did. Zinla felt a flicker of resolve ignite within her. Her father continued. Once the public learns of your true identity, everything will change. Mandla will understand the magnitude of what he threw away. The world will see you as the woman you truly are, not as a victim, but as an heir. She inhaled deeply, absorbing every word. Her father rose and walked toward the door. Rest for now. Tomorrow begins the first step toward your new life. When he left the room, Zinla sat quietly, the folder open on her lap, her heart beating with a mixture of fear, strength, and awakening purpose. Meanwhile, Mandla tossed and turned in his bed, unaware that the truth he feared the most, the truth that would shatter everything he believed about himself, was already unfolding, and fate, watching silently, prepared to balance the scales. The next days unfolded with a quiet but powerful sense of transformation around Zinla, one that neither she nor anyone who had once underestimated her could have anticipated. Resting in her childhood home, surrounded by people who cherished her, she began to heal in ways far deeper than the physical. Her leg remained weak, the limp still present, but the heaviness in her spirit, the exhaustion from years of emotional neglect, slowly began to lift. Each morning, the soft sunlight filtered through her curtains, warming her face and reminding her that a new chapter had begun. And each morning, she told herself the same thing. I survived what was meant to break me. Her days were filled with therapy sessions arranged by her father's specialists, who treated her with genuine care, not contempt masked as sacrifice. Physically, she became stronger. Emotionally, she became sharper. For so long, Mandla's voice had been the soundtrack of her self-doubt. Now it was being overwritten by her father's steady encouragement and Manandi's gentle reminders of her worth. One morning, during a therapy session in the family gym, her physiotherapist smiled at her progress. You're improving faster than expected, he said. Your balance has strengthened significantly these past few days. Zinla managed a small smile, though sweat trickled down her forehead. She focused on her movements, shifting her weight from her cane to her recovering leg. The effort was intense, her muscles trembling, but she stood tall. Yes, the therapist continued, but the real change isn't in your body, it's in your mind. You're fighting again. Zinla paused. Absorbing his words, they resonated deeply. She realized something then. For the first time in years, she was fighting for herself, not for the approval or affection of a man who never intended to give it. After each session, she returned to her father's study to review the documents outlining her future position. The legal team had already processed the first phase of the transition. Over the next several weeks, her name would appear across multiple divisions of the company. The world didn't know it yet, but soon they would. One evening, her father knocked gently on her door before entering. He was smiling, a rare, proud, glowing smile. I have news, he said. Yes, Baba, she asked, sitting up straighter. The announcement will be released tomorrow morning. Her breath caught. Tomorrow? Yes, he replied. The board has fully approved the transfer. You will be named the upcoming CEO. The media will cover it extensively. Zinla pressed a hand to her chest, the weight of the moment settling over her. I never imagined this would be my life. You earned it, her father said simply. You are my heir, the future of our legacy. She swallowed hard. And Mandla has no idea. Her father's expression hardened slightly. He will soon. And when he does, I want you to remember something. He walked to her, placed a hand gently under her chin, and lifted her face until their eyes met. You owe him nothing, he said. No apologies, no explanations, no pieces of yourself. What he rejected was not a broken woman. It was a queen whose crown he was too blind to see. A tear slipped down her cheek, but this time it wasn't from pain. It was from awakening. That night, Zinla couldn't sleep. Her mind replayed scenes from her marriage, some tender, many painful. She saw herself pleading with Mandla, trying to soothe him, trying to fix problems she didn't create, trying to hold together a love he had never honored. She saw him turn away from her after the accident, his eyes filled with disappointment every time she limped. She saw herself shrinking so he might feel bigger, quieter so he might feel louder. But now, she saw all those moments with clarity. He hadn't changed because she became weaker. He had changed because he had always been weak. In the early hours of the morning, she stood by her window, watching the stars fade into the first hints of dawn. The sky shifted from navy to violet to pink, as if the world itself were preparing for her rebirth. When the sun finally broke over the horizon, illuminating her reflection in the glass, she whispered to herself, "This is my beginning," and fate seemed to whisper back. At last, later that day, after her official measurement for mobility improvement, the family doctor approached her with a warm smile. "Your progress is exceptional," he said. "If you continue at this rate, you may walk without the cane sooner than expected." Her heart swelled. "Really? Truly," he nodded. "But you must continue to push yourself." She nodded, determination settling in her bones. When she returned to her room, she stood before her mirror and saw a new woman taking shape, her posture straighter, her eyes clearer, her spirit unburdened. Though she still leaned slightly on her cane, she radiated strength. She decided then she would not hide any longer. That afternoon, she asked Manandi to bring her a set of clothes, something elegant, a soft, flowing dress paired with a simple necklace her mother had gifted her years ago. She brushed her hair, applied light makeup, and looked at herself with pride. The old Zinla, the one who apologized for existing, was gone. She walked downstairs with slow but purposeful steps. Her father looked up from his newspaper and paused, admiration softening his features. "You look like your mother," he said quietly. "Do I?" she whispered. "Yes," he said. "Strong, graceful, unbreakable." Zinla smiled a real smile, not the forced ones she had used during her marriage. Her father stood. "Are you ready for tomorrow?" She took a slow breath. "Yes, I'm ready." But even as she said it, somewhere across the city, Mandla felt unease tighten around him again. He didn't understand why he couldn't focus, why anxiety gnawed at him, why every attempt to reach Ayanda felt strained. He didn't understand why the world seemed to be slipping from beneath his feet. But fate understood. It was the calm before the storm, the moment before his world unraveled completely. Meanwhile, after dinner, Zinla found herself sitting in the quiet garden behind the mansion. The night breeze kissed her skin, stirring the leaves above her. She remembered sitting here as a child, dreaming of a future filled with love and purpose. Now, she sat here as a woman, wiser and stronger. Her phone buzzed a message from a private number. She hesitated before opening it. "I need to talk to you, please, Mandla." Her heart no longer raced as it once would have. Instead, she stared at the screen calmly before locking the phone. She owed him nothing. She would not go back to a cage she had finally escaped. As she walked back inside, a subtle smile touched her lips. Tomorrow, the world would see her. Tomorrow, Mandla would see what he had thrown away. Tomorrow, she would step fully into her destiny. Tonight, she rested. For the storm was coming not for her, but for the man who believed he had power over her fate. Mandla woke with a jolt, drenched in sweat, though the room was cool. A strange, heavy silence hung in the air. It felt like the aftermath of a storm, except nothing had happened, at least not in the physical world. But inside him, something was shifting, unraveling. He couldn't explain it, but fear pressed against his chest like an unseen hand. He sat on the edge of his bed, rubbing his face. The sleepless nights were catching up to him, ever since he had stood at the gates of Zinla's family estate and been turned away like a stranger. Unease had followed him like a shadow he couldn't outrun. He tried to shake it off, telling himself she wasn't worth thinking about, that she would eventually crawl back, begging for forgiveness, but she hadn't. No messages. No calls. Not a single attempt to contact him, and the silence felt more threatening than anger ever could. He needed control. He needed validation. He needed Ayanda. He grabbed his phone and sent her a message. "Good morning. Can we meet later?" No reply. He frowned. He showered, dressed sharply, and headed to the office, hoping work would distract him. But when he arrived, the building buzzed with nervous energy. People avoided his gaze, whispering behind their hands. His irritation flared. "What's going on?" he asked a passing coworker. The man flinched. "The board is meeting again. Emergency session." "About what?" I don't know." The man stammered before slipping away. Mandla's stomach twisted. Something was wrong. He marched to his office, slammed the door behind him, and began reviewing the documents he hoped would salvage his standing. But before he could gather his thoughts, his phone buzzed. Ayanda. Relief washed over him. He snatched the phone. "We need to talk," her message read. His fingers flew across the screen. "Yes, lunch, evening. I can come now." A pause. Then, "Meet me at my place. An hour." He didn't hesitate. At 12:45, he arrived at her apartment, one he had paid the deposit for. She opened the door wearing a silk robe, her expression poised but distant. No kiss, no smile, no warmth. "Come in," she said curtly. He stepped inside, tension coiling in his gut. Something was very, very wrong. She closed the door and folded her arms. "We need to discuss where this relationship is going." Mandla blinked. "Going? Ayanda, I thought we were clear. I'm working hard to make things better for us." She raised an eyebrow. "Working hard, Mandla. You can't even secure the promotion you promised me." "I'm dealing with setbacks," he snapped. "But that's temporary." "I don't do temporary," she interrupted coldly. He stared at her, stunned. "What's that supposed to mean?" "It means," she said slowly, "I need stability. I need someone who can offer more than promises, someone who can provide the life I deserve." Mandla's heart dropped. "Ayanda, everything I've done for you. And I appreciate that," she replied without emotion. "But appreciation doesn't pay my bills, or buy the lifestyle I want." He felt like the floor was shifting beneath him. "You said you believed in me. You said you wanted a future together," she sighed. "I wanted the future you described, but you haven't delivered. Your job is hanging by a thread. You lost the biggest contract of your career, and you have nothing to offer me, except excuses." Anger and desperation collided inside him. "You helped sabotage those documents," he shouted. "I know you did. Why? To force me to rely on you, to control me." Ayanda didn't even flinch. "If you were competent, a missing document wouldn't destroy your career." His breath caught. "So you admit it," she shrugged. "I admit nothing, but your reaction tells me everything I need to know." "You used me," he whispered, realization flooding him like ice water. She tilted her head. "I outgrew you, that's all." It wasn't just rejection, it was dismissal. As though he were nothing. As though he had always been nothing. "Ayanda." "Please," he said, voice cracking, humiliation burning his throat. "I can fix this. I can get the promotion. I just need more time." "I don't have more time," she replied simply. "I've met someone else." His world stopped. "What? He's successful, established, and unlike you, he doesn't make promises he can't keep." "Ayanda, we're done, Mandla. Please leave." She walked to the door and opened it. Her expression was flat, bored, indifferent, as if ending their relationship was no more difficult than discarding a worn-out dress. Mandla stood frozen, the room blurred. His breath came shallow and fast. "Ayanda," he whispered again, the word dissolving into the air like smoke. "Goodbye," she said, then looked at him one last time. "And for what it's worth, throwing out your wife was the stupidest thing you ever did." She closed the door softly, gently, almost kindly. A mercy for someone she no longer cared about. Mandla stood there in the hallway, numb. His legs felt weak, his chest felt hollow. Everything he had gambled, everything he had sacrificed was crumbling. He walked aimlessly to his car, his mind blank, When he finally sat behind the wheel, the first tear slipped down his cheek. He brushed it away angrily. Then another came, and another, and suddenly he was sobbing loud, choking, uncontrollable sobs that ricocheted through the empty car. He cried for Ayanda. He cried for the promotion slipping away. He cried for the man he thought he was but never became. But most of all, he cried because for the first time, he feared he had destroyed something irreplaceable. When he eventually returned to his office, his eyes swollen and red, he walked straight into another blow. His manager stood waiting, tension etched across his face. "Mandla," he said, "we need to talk." Mandla swallowed, dread churning. "About the contract. About everything," his manager said. "Follow me." They entered the meeting room where the entire board sat stern, disappointed, resolute. One of them slid a document across the table. "This is your termination notice," the chairman said. "Effective immediately." Mandla felt the world tilt. "Termination. You can't." "We can," the chairman said, "and we have. Your performance has declined significantly. You have missed deadlines, lost clients, and compromised the company's reputation. And, the chairman added sharply, we received a complaint from one of your clients alleging unprofessional behavior." "A complaint? What complaint?" "Apparently," another board member said, "you showed up drunk to a meeting." Mandla stared, mouth open. What? That's a lie. I've never." The chairman held up a hand. "The decision is final. Please collect your things and vacate the premises." He felt dizzy, lightheaded, swallowed by shame. "But I gave this company years of my life," he whispered, "and we thank you for your service." The chairman said flatly, "But this is where it ends." As Mandla left the building carrying a box of his belongings, whispers followed him like shadows. He lowered his head, unable to meet anyone's eyes. The world he'd built on ego and ambition was crumbling beneath him. When he reached his car, his hands trembled. His phone buzzed an alert, a news notification. He tapped it, and there, displayed across the screen, was a headline. Zinla Thabani appointed as sole heir and future CEO of Thabani Global Enterprises, a family empire valued at over $2 billion. A photograph accompanied the headline. Zinla, radiant and poised, standing beside her father, her cane barely visible, her eyes glowing with a quiet strength he had never noticed. His breath caught, his heart stopped, his box of belongings slipped from his hands, crashing to the pavement, and for the first time since he threw her into the storm, Mandla understood the full weight of what he had done. He hadn't cast out a burden. He had cast out a queen, and the consequences were only just beginning. The world does not pause to let a broken man catch his breath. Hours after Mandla stood frozen in that parking lot, his belongings scattered, his career shattered, and his pride hanging by threads, the internet erupted with the news he least expected. The news he was least prepared for. Zinla Thabani, heir to a $2 billion empire, future CEO, global successor, a woman of enormous influence. Every headline stabbed him with fresh disbelief. Every photograph of her felt like a mirror reflecting his foolishness, his cruelty, his blindness. But the worst part, the part that crushed him, was seeing her standing straight, composed, radiant. Not broken, not lost, not the wounded, dependent woman he had conditioned himself to see. His hands trembled as he scrolled through article after article. With each swipe, the truth became more undeniable, more humiliating, more devastating. He had thrown out a billionaire heiress in the rain like she was disposable. He had mocked her limp. He had accused her of ruining his life. He had pushed her away when she needed compassion. He had married into unimaginable wealth and never once knew it. Mandla's breathing grew rapid, uneven. He stumbled backward and sank onto the driver's seat, gripping the steering wheel as though it were the only thing tethering him to sanity. Images from their marriage flashed before him with brutal clarity, moments he had twisted into justifications for cruelty. She had always carried herself with grace. She had always been forgiving. She had always avoided conflict. She had always tried to love him, and in return, he had rewarded her gentleness with scorn. "Stupid," he whispered to himself. Voice cracking, "Stupid, stupid, stupid." For years, he had mocked her, modest upbringing, convinced she came from nothing because she never flaunted wealth. He had treated her as though she were lucky to have him, and yet the truth, this magnificent, cruel truth, revealed that he was the one who had been elevated by her presence. He was the one who had married above his status. He was the one who had been chosen by someone who could have had everything, but instead chose love. He was the one who betrayed that love. His reflection in the rearview mirror looked unfamiliar, wild-eyed, panicked, aging by the minute. A man collapsing under the weight of his choices. Then came the calls. First, his co-workers, shocked. "Mandla, did you know? Is this why you were distracted? Did you leave her because you didn't know who she really was?" He hung up on them. Then his family. His sister's voice blasted through the phone. "You fool! Do you realize what you've done? You threw away a woman worth more than all of us combined." He ended the call, but one call pierced through all the noise. Ayanda. For a moment, hope fluttered in his chest like a dying flame fighting for life. Maybe she regretted leaving him. Maybe she realized she had misjudged him. Maybe. "Mandla," she said, her tone cold and calculated. "Was it true?" "What?" he asked, voice trembling. "That your wife, your crippled wife, is actually an heiress. That her family owns a multi-billion-dollar corporation." He hesitated. Shame washed over him. "I didn't know." Ayanda let out a sharp breath. "So you spent months whining about money, complaining about your life, blaming her for everything, and she was literally sitting on a fortune." He closed his eyes. "Ayanda, and now you're unemployed," she continued, "while she's about to become CEO of a global empire." Mandla swallowed hard. "Please, don't say it like that." But Ayanda had no mercy left in her. "You're useless to me now. And honestly, after everything I've learned today, she was too good for you." Click. She ended the call. The final thread holding his ego together snapped. He slammed the phone onto the dashboard and screamed a guttural, desperate sound of a man watching the last pieces of his life crumble into dust. His chest heaved. His fists pounded the steering wheel. He screamed again, louder, until his throat burned. But the world did not care. The world was too busy celebrating Zinla. And as the day unfolded, her image appeared everywhere. News banners, TV interviews, business forums. The internet praised her resilience, her intelligence, her grace. People admired how she had overcome physical adversity and personal tragedy to emerge as a symbol of strength. No one knew about the storm she had escaped. No one knew about the cruelty she had endured. No one knew about the man who had cast her aside, except Mandla. He drove aimlessly for hours, replaying every argument, every cruel comment, every moment when her eyes begged for compassion, and he refused to give it. He remembered the nights she cried herself to sleep, the mornings she limped yet still cooked his meals, the afternoons she smiled despite her pain, the countless times she had said, "I love you," as though trying to bridge the widening gap between them. She was an heiress, yet she had lived modestly for him. She was powerful, yet she had humbled herself for him. She was precious, yet he had treated her as disposable. The truth was unbearable. At sunset, Mandla found himself parked outside the mansion again. He didn't even remember driving there. His body simply gravitated toward the last point of contact with the life he lost. The same guards stood at the gate, their expressions impassive. When they saw him exit the car, they exchanged a look of annoyance. One stepped forward. "You're not allowed here." Mandla raised his hands in surrender, his voice trembling. "Please, I'm not here to cause trouble. I just need to see her. One last time. No, I beg you," he whispered, tears pooling in his eyes. "Please, you don't understand. I didn't know. I didn't know who she was." "That is not her fault," the guard said, unmoved. "Please," Mandla said again, his voice cracking. "I need to apologize. I need to make it right. I can't live not knowing that she hates me. She doesn't hate you, the guard replied coldly. She doesn't think about you at all. Those words hit harder than any slap. She's moved on, the guard continued. You should too. Mandla staggered backward, the rejection heavier than the night air. The guards turned away, returning to their posts, while he remained frozen, small, broken, defeated. Inside the mansion, Zinla sat with her father, reviewing the final documents for the press release. She felt steady, composed, calm. But when she glanced toward the window, she noticed movement near the gate, just a silhouette in the distance. Her heart stilled for a brief moment. Then she turned away, her resolve firm. Less than a week ago, she would have looked for him, hoped for him, cried for him. Now, he was merely a lesson she had survived. Her father noticed her shift in expression. What is it? Nothing, she said softly. Just a shadow passing by. Her father smiled knowingly. Let it leave. And she did. Outside, Mandla climbed into his car, starting the engine with trembling hands. As he drove into the darkness, one truth echoed louder than all others. He had not just lost a wife. He had lost the kindest soul he had ever known. The only person who had ever loved him without condition. The only person who would have stood beside him even at his lowest. He had kicked out a woman the world saw as royalty. And tomorrow, the world would see him exactly as he was. A man who destroyed his own future with his own hands. The next morning arrived heavy, like the sky itself knew that two worlds were about to collide. For Zinla, the day felt strangely serene. She woke earlier than usual, her body still tired but her spirit calmer than it had been in years. Sunlight painted soft gold across her room, touching the edges of her furniture and illuminating the framed picture of her mother near the window. It reminded her of warmth of a time before pain, before fear, before Mandla. She breathed deeply, allowing the peace of the moment to settle around her. Today was her first official step into the empire she would one day lead. Her father had arranged a small private gathering with the board, followed by a strategic meeting at the corporate headquarters. Nothing public yet, but enough to solidify everything. She dressed with care, choosing a simple but elegant outfit, soft cream fabric that draped gracefully over her body. Her cane, polished and adorned with a minimal silver handle, felt less like a burden today and more like a symbol of her perseverance. When she looked at herself in the mirror, she didn't see the broken woman Mandla had made her feel like. She saw a survivor. She saw a leader. She saw a woman rising. Just as she turned to leave the room, a knock sounded at her door. "Come in," she called. Her father stepped in, his expression unusually solemn. "Before we leave," he said, "there is something you must prepare yourself for." She frowned slightly. "What is it, Baba?" Thabani breathed out slowly. "Your husband has returned." A chill spread through her. "He is outside the gate again," her father continued. "He arrived at dawn. He's been waiting for over an hour." Zinla's stomach tightened, but she lifted her chin. "Why did he come?" "To beg," her father replied, eyes narrowing. "He wants forgiveness. He wants access. He wants what he thinks he lost." Zinla's heart thudded with a mixture of emotions, anger, pity, hurt, and something else she couldn't name. But she nodded slowly. "Let him wait." Her father smiled faintly, proud of her strength. Downstairs, as they prepared to leave for the headquarters, the staff whispered among themselves. Everyone had heard the news. Everyone knew the man at the gate was the one who had humiliated her. And now he wanted forgiveness, because the narrative had changed, because she was no longer the vulnerable, crippled woman he mistreated, but a woman of power. When Zinla and her father stepped out of the mansion, the guard straightened. Beyond the gates, pacing anxiously, Mandla looked disheveled, hair unkempt, eyes puffy, suit creased. The transformation was drastic. He was no longer the proud, self-assured man who barked orders and spoke with arrogance. He looked like a man who had lost everything, and indeed, he had. When he saw Zinla emerge, he froze. His breath hitched. For a moment, it looked like he forgot how to stand. He hadn't seen her since the night he pushed her out into the storm, and the contrast was staggering. She walked with grace. She held her head high. Her presence radiated strength. Mandla felt a gut-wrenching shame. He stepped toward the gate immediately. "Zinla, please, I need to talk to you." The guards blocked him with a single movement. "Step back," one commanded. "No," Mandla pleaded. "I need to talk to my wife." Zinla's father stepped forward. "She is no longer yours." Mandla swallowed hard, trembling. "Please, just one chance. One moment to explain. I made mistakes. I was angry. I was confused. Zinla raised a hand, silencing him. Her expression wasn't cold. It was composed, detached, in control. A stark contrast to the shattered man standing before her. "Mandla," she said softly, "what do you want from me?" He took a shaky breath. "I want to fix things. I want to undo everything. I want another chance." She tilted her head slightly. "Another chance to do what? To push me again, to belittle me again, to treat me like a burden when I gave you everything I had." He shook his head frantically. "No, I was wrong. I didn't realize what I had. I didn't understand your worth." Zinle's voice lowered. "My worth shouldn't have depended on your understanding." He flinched, the truth piercing through him. "I was selfish," he continued desperately. "I let work pressure get to me. I let other people influence me, Ayanda." "Stop," she said sharply. "Do not blame another woman for the decisions you made." He gulped, nodding quickly. You're right. It was me, all me. I was blind. I was cruel. I didn't know that I was wealthy." Zinla finished, her tone calm but cutting. His mouth opened, but no words came out. She took a slow breath. "You didn't know my family had money, and that's the only reason you're here." "No," he cried. "No, I swear it's not about the money." But even his voice didn't believe his own lie. Zinla spoke again, steady and clear. "Where was this apology when you threw me out in the rain, when you mocked my disability, when you blamed me for your failures, when you let another woman manipulate you, when you treated me like I was beneath you?" He shook his head, tears spilling. I know I was wrong. I'm not denying it, but I can change. Please, just let me try." Her eyes softened, not with affection, but with sorrow. "Mandla, you never loved me." "I did," he whispered. "I still do." She smiled sadly. "No, you loved the version of me who made your life easy. You loved the idea of a wife who served your ambition. But the moment I stumbled, you left me." He shut his eyes tightly, crushed by the truth. "Mandla," she continued quietly, "love does not abandon. Love does not humiliate. Love does not push a wounded woman into a storm." His tears fell harder. Zinla looked at him with a gentleness that cut deeper than any cruelty. "You are not here because you love me. You are here because you lost everything." He opened his mouth to protest, but she shook her head. "Even now, you are thinking of what you can regain, not what you destroyed." Mandla dropped to his knees. "Please, I'm begging you, don't leave me like this." "You left me long before I left you," she replied. Silence washed over them. Finally, she took a step closer, not enough to touch him, but enough for him to hear her clearly. "I forgive you, Mandla," he gasped softly. "But forgiveness is not an invitation to return," she added. His heart cracked. "I forgive you," she repeated, "so I can move forward, not so you can pull me back." Her father placed a supportive hand on her shoulder. Zinla continued, her voice gentle but firm. "You must learn from what you've done. You must rebuild your life without expecting me to repair the pieces." "No," he whispered. "No, please. This is the last time you will see me," she said. The words hit him like a blow to the chest. "Goodbye, Mandla." She turned away. He lunged forward instinctively, but the guards stepped in, holding him back as he sobbed violently. "Zinla," he cried, "please don't go, please." But she didn't turn back. She walked toward the waiting car with her father, her cane tapping softly against the ground. Each step she took felt like a reclamation of her dignity, her identity, her destiny. Mandla collapsed to the ground, broken beyond recognition. From the car window, Zinla watched him grow smaller as they drove away, not with bitterness, but with acceptance. He had been a chapter. She was moving into a new book. For the first time in years, she didn't feel helpless. She felt whole. The days following Mandla's collapse at the mansion gate were a downward spiral he could neither control nor comprehend. After Zinla walked away calm, composed, untouchable, his world became a blur of regret, shame, and growing panic. He had never felt so powerless, so small, so utterly stripped of identity. For years, he had defined himself through control. Control over his wife, control over his image, control over his ambitions. Now, all of it was gone, and the hollow space left behind gnawed at him relentlessly. He spent the first night drinking in the dark, surrounded by empty bottles and the discarded remnants of the life he once believed was thriving. His apartment was silent. Suffocatingly so. The shadows on the walls mocked him. Every creak of the house felt like a whisper of judgment. He couldn't escape the truth. His life was falling apart, and he was the one who orchestrated its collapse. By morning, he woke on the floor with a splitting headache and a heavier heart. His phone buzzed with messages, none from the person he most wanted to hear from. Not that he deserved her forgiveness, but he craved something from her: acknowledgement, closure, anything. Instead, the world offered him cold indifference. He checked his emails and found several unpaid bills, notices from lenders, and warnings from his landlord. Without employment, without support, and without ambition, his finances were unraveling. The savings he had left minimal to begin with were dwindling fast. His phone buzzed again. This time, the name on the screen sent a jolt of conflicted emotion through him: Ayanda. For a brief, foolish moment, hope flickered. Maybe she had reconsidered. Maybe she realized she wanted him after all. His hands trembled as he swiped to answer, but the voice on the line immediately crushed any illusions. "Mandla," Ayanda said sharply, "I need you to stop giving my number to clients." Confusion knitted his brow. "What? I haven't." "Well, someone has," she snapped. "I've been receiving calls all morning, asking if I'm representing you or speaking on your behalf. They're asking if I'm helping you recover lost contracts." Mandla's stomach twisted. "I didn't do that. I don't care if you did or not," Ayanda said. "What I care about is you staying far away from me and my reputation." He swallowed hard. "Ayanda, please, don't do this. I need someone. You need to get your life under control." She cut in. "And you're not dragging me down with you. Whatever image I built for myself, I will not let you destroy it." "Ayanda, I met someone who knows what he wants," she said bluntly. "Someone who doesn't crumble under pressure. Someone who doesn't expect to be carried." His throat tightened painfully. "You replaced me that quickly," she scoffed. "There was nothing to replace. Goodbye, Mandla." The line went dead. He stared at the phone as though it had betrayed him. Though deep inside, he knew the real betrayal had begun long ago. When he had chosen Ayanda over the woman who truly loved him, he hurled the phone across the room, chest heaving with rage and grief. The device shattered against the wall. It didn't make him feel any better. The next few days blurred into one another. His landlord demanded rent. He avoided calls. The electricity company issued a warning for disconnection. He stopped answering the door because he feared which debt collector might be standing there. His world was shrinking at an alarming pace. Then came the final blow. A letter arrived, a formal notice from the bank. The loan Mandla had taken out months ago, back when he still dreamed of impressing Ayanda with extravagant gifts, had defaulted. Without a job, without income, he could no longer keep up with payments. The bank would be taking legal action. He sank onto his sofa, letter trembling in his hand. His pulse thundered. He felt like he was drowning in a sea of consequences crafted by his own selfishness. That evening, he sat in darkness, clutching his head in his hands. The silence was unbearable. The weight of loneliness crushed him. He thought of Zinla, her eyes full of hurt, her trembling voice pleading with him, her limp, her unwavering loyalty. He thought of the way she used to smile at him, as though he were the center of her world. He realized how casually he had destroyed a woman's spirit, only to now find himself living inside the ruins of his own. And then, as if summoned by the universe to twist the knife deeper, his phone, a new cheap replacement, buzzed with a notification, a viral video. He tapped it. It was footage of the Thabani Global Enterprises press conference. There she was, standing at the podium, her father beside her. Dressed in a sleek, tailored suit, Kane resting elegantly at her side. Cameras flashed, reporters applauded, investors cheered. She was breathtaking. She was powerful. She was everything he had failed to see. His breath caught as she spoke, her voice smooth and confident. "I stand here not as someone defined by limitation," she said, "but as someone strengthened by adversity. Pain taught me resilience. Loss taught me clarity, and I am honored to step into this responsibility with gratitude and courage." The crowd erupted. Mandla felt something collapse inside him, a slow implosion of everything he once believed himself to be. He was witnessing the rebirth of the woman he had crushed. And it was beautiful. More beautiful than anything he had ever allowed himself to see. He whispered her name, Zinla. But the world had moved on without him, and so had she. Later that night, as he wandered aimlessly through the city, he found himself standing outside Ayanda's apartment building. The lights were on. Laughter spilled out from the open balcony window. He stepped closer. Inside, Ayanda was in the arms of another man, a man tall, expensively dressed, with confidence radiating off him. They laughed together, clinking glasses, utterly oblivious to the man standing alone on the street below. For a long moment, Mandla stared at them, the reality sinking deeply into his bones. She had replaced him, fully, effortlessly, completely, and just like that, another illusion shattered. He turned away from the building, his shoulders trembling, his breath fogged the night air. As he walked toward the nearest bus stop, he had sold his car to pay part of the overdue loan. He sat on a bench, head bowed, surrounded by the waiting hum of passing cars and murmured conversations. Life around him was moving, vibrant, alive. His life felt like it had come to a standstill. He whispered into the night, "What have I done?" But the night offered no answer. His misery deepened the next morning, when a courier slipped a letter under his door. It was a legal summons, debt hearing. As he stared at the envelope, hands shaking, one truth settled over him like a suffocating blanket. He had lost everything. Ayanda, his job, his reputation, his home, his dignity, but worst of all, the one person who would have forgiven him, the one person who saw goodness in him, even when he didn't, was gone forever. And she wasn't coming back. Mandla collapsed onto the floor, sobbing uncontrollably, his regrets echoing through the empty apartment. Some consequences come quietly, some arrive like storms. But the worst come when you realize the person you shattered became the one person you will spend the rest of your life wishing you could rewrite your past for. And for Mandla, that realization was only the beginning of the agony yet to come. The weeks that followed felt like a long descent into a darkness Mandla had never imagined for himself. His apartment grew emptier as he sold off piece after piece, his television, his watch collection, his suits, anything that could buy him a few more days before the next bill came due. But no matter what he sold, the weight on his shoulders never lifted. It pressed deeper, heavier, suffocating. He avoided mirrors now. He didn't want to see what he had become. Everywhere he went, whispers followed him. Someone at the grocery store recognized him from a news segment and muttered, "That's the man who threw out the billionaire's daughter." Another time, someone else sneered, "Imagine being that stupid." The humiliation soaked into his skin like cold rain. He no longer had the strength to snap back. His pride had eroded, piece by painful piece. But the most crushing reminder came from the corporate world he once tried to climb. Followers on social media shared clips from Zinla's leadership announcement. Business podcasts discussed her rise, calling it inspiring, extraordinary, a triumph of resilience. And Mandla watched all of it. He watched the woman he had belittled stand with poise and intelligence. He watched her answer questions with confidence he never knew she possessed. He watched her command respect from global investors. He watched her shine. Every time her face appeared on a screen, he felt another dagger twist into his chest. "That could have been your life," a voice whispered inside him. "You could have stood beside her. You could have grown with her. You could have loved her. But you chose pride over partnership, cruelty over kindness, greed over gratitude." He tried to silence the voice, but it only grew louder. And then the debt hearing date arrived. He walked into the courtroom, wearing a wrinkled shirt and the only pair of clean pants he had left. His hair was unkempt, his eyes sunken. Once, he used to walk into rooms imagining others admired him. Now, he expected only judgment. The judge reviewed his case with thinly veiled impatience. Mandla owed more than he could pay. Far more. Legal consequences loomed. His hands shook as he signed the final notice. Within months, if he couldn't repay the remaining balance, he would lose everything, even the apartment he was barely holding on to. He left the courtroom numb, the city around him blurring. He didn't know where he was walking. His legs simply carried him forward, step by step, until he found himself standing at a place that made his heart clench. The towering headquarters of Thabani Global Enterprises. The revolving glass doors, the sleek marble lobby visible from outside, the polished cars pulling into the VIP entrance. Everything about the building radiated power, her power. He swallowed hard. He shouldn't be here. He knew it, and yet, something inside him, shame, regret, longing, desperation, pulled him in. Before he fully realized what he was doing, he was standing at the reception desk, eyes wide, heart pounding. The receptionist glanced up. "May I help you, sir?" He cleared his throat. I'm here to see Ms. Zinla." The receptionist typed something quickly into her computer. "Do you have an appointment?" "No," he admitted, lowering his eyes. "But I'm her husband, mate." The receptionist paused. Her expression shifted not with sympathy, but with recognition. "Oh, you." Heat rushed to Mandla's face. "Please, I just need a moment with her." She hesitated. "Let me check." Minutes passed like hours. Mandla stood there, trembling, afraid to breathe. Several employees passed through the lobby, and some whispered when they recognized him. Shame crawled beneath his skin. Finally, the receptionist looked up. "You may go to the 18th floor, conference room A. Someone will escort you." He exhaled shakily. "Thank you." He followed the security officer into the elevator. The doors closed. The numbers climbed. His heart hammered faster with each floor. On the 18th, the doors opened. A long hallway stretched ahead, lined with glass rooms. Inside them, executives spoke in hushed tones, employees typed at polished desks, and screens displayed financial charts. Everything here looked expensive, efficient, strong. Everything he was not. The guard led him to a large room with glass walls, then gestured for him to enter. Mandla stepped inside and froze. Zinla was there. But not alone. She sat at the head of a long table, surrounded by senior staff. A digital projection of financial statistics glowed on the screen behind her. Papers were neatly arranged in front of each executive. She looked like she belonged here, confident, poised, breathtaking. But when she saw him, her expression flickered not with shock, not with anger, but with quiet resignation. "Mandla," she said calmly. Hearing her voice again made his eyes sting. He lowered his gaze, unable to meet hers. The executives exchanged looks, sensing private history. "Let's take a short break," Zinla said gently. Chairs slid back. People gathered their papers. They exited with polite bows. Once the doors closed, silence filled the room. Mandla finally lifted his head. She was even more stunning up close, strength radiating from her posture, wisdom in her eyes. The faint memory of the vulnerable woman he had once dominated evaporated. Before him stood a leader, an heir, a force. He swallowed hard. "You look different." "I feel different," she replied simply. "Stronger." He nodded slowly. "I see that." Silence stretched again. Then Mandla broke. He dropped to his knees. His voice cracked raw, desperate, aching. "Zinla, I am sorry." She did not respond immediately. He continued, tears running freely. "I don't expect forgiveness. I know I don't deserve it. I know I hurt you in ways I can't undo. I know I took advantage of your kindness. I know I let anger control me. And I know," his breath hitched, "I know I threw away the best thing I ever had." A tear rolled down his cheek. "To think I stood next to you every day and didn't see your worth. Didn't value your heart. I was blind. I was stupid. I was cruel. And now, everything is gone." Zinla's face softened barely. "Mandla, what do you want from me?" He swallowed. "Nothing. I don't deserve anything. I just wanted you to know I see it now. I see who you really are. And his voice broke again. "I hate myself for how I treated you." A moment of quiet passed between them. Zinla rose from her seat, her cane tapping lightly against the floor as she approached him. She stopped a few feet away, not close enough for him to reach her, but close enough to hear every word. "What you are feeling now," she said gently, "is called consequence, not punishment, not cruelty. Just consequence." He nodded weakly, tears dripping onto the polished floor. "I forgave you already," she continued softly. "But forgiveness does not rebuild what you broke." He closed his eyes, anguish twisting his features. "You must learn from this," she said. "Grow from this, become better from this. Not for me, for yourself." He looked up at her, his lips trembling. "Is there no chance that we could start again?" Her eyes softened with sadness, not love, but compassion. "Mandla," she whispered, "you ended us the night you pushed me into the storm." The words shattered the last hope inside him. She stepped back. "Stand up." He struggled to his feet. "You are stronger than this version of yourself," she said. "Find a way to become the man you always claimed you wanted to be." And then, with a steady voice that carried the weight of truth, "But that journey will not include me." Mandla pressed a shaking hand to his mouth to stifle a sob. She nodded, final, resolute. "Goodbye, Mandla." She turned away. He watched her walk back to the head of the table, straight-backed, dignified, powerful, and he understood fully, painfully, that she had outgrown him in every possible way. When the guards gently escorted him from the building, he did not resist. Outside, as the wind brushed past him, he whispered into the air, "I lost you forever." And the world remained silent. Because it was true, Zinla's rise did not happen overnight. But once it began, it was unstoppable. In the weeks following her appointment as heir and future CEO, she immersed herself in the world she had been destined to inherit. Corporate meetings, leadership briefings, philanthropic forums each day expanded her understanding of the empire her family had built. The weight of responsibility was heavy, yes, but it was also empowering. For the first time in years, she walked into rooms where her voice mattered, where her mind was valued, where her presence commanded respect. Her father made sure she received the best advisors, not because he doubted her abilities, but because he knew the world was harsher to women, especially those who bore visible scars. But Zinla quickly proved she did not need shielding. She listened carefully, asked incisive questions, and brought fresh insight into discussions that had grown stale over years of routine leadership. One afternoon, during a major board strategy meeting, a senior executive challenged one of her proposals. "With all due respect," he said, "this initiative is too ambitious for someone so new in leadership. We should maintain the system we have. It has served us well." Zinla met his gaze calmly. "Maintaining a system simply because it exists is not leadership," she replied. "It's complacency. This company did not grow from fear of change." Her father smiled, proud. The executive cleared his throat and sat down. No one challenged her again, but the transformation didn't stop at business. Her physical recovery surged with her newfound resolve. Weeks of therapy strengthened her leg far more quickly than doctors anticipated. One morning, after completing a routine set of exercises, her physiotherapist stepped back with visible amazement. "Walk toward me," he instructed. She did, steady, controlled, with far less reliance on her cane. When she reached him, he nodded with admiration. "You may not need the cane much longer." Those words washed over her like sunlight. She felt a swell of emotion, joy mixed with relief, and something deeper, something fierce. Freedom. She stayed up late that night, staring at the cane leaning against her wall. For so long, it symbolized weakness in Mandla's eyes. But now she saw it differently. It was not a reminder of what she couldn't do. It was a reminder of what she survived. Still, she whispered a promise to herself. "Soon, I will walk without you." And she would. Outside her personal transformation, her philanthropic drives gained massive attention. One program in particular, the Hope Mobility Initiative, aimed to provide advanced physiotherapy, mobility aids, and medical support to individuals living with disabilities across underserved communities. The media praised her vision. People called her a symbol of resilience. Investors offered to back her programs. Emails poured in, thanking her for using her platform to uplift others. She read every message. Each one reminded her why she had endured, why life had allowed her to rise from the ashes of betrayal. She was not just leading a company. She was leading a movement. Meanwhile, her mansion became a sanctuary, warm, safe, filled with laughter again. Manandi cooked her favorite meals. Her father shared stories of her mother to keep her memory alive. Friends she had lost touch with reached out, apologizing for having disappeared during her marriage. She forgave them easily. Her heart had softened, not hardened. Sometimes she sat by the garden pond at dusk, the sky tinted in soft oranges and purples, and wondered what her younger self would think of the woman she had become. Would she be proud, surprised, amazed? Yes, she decided. She would be. But the world, as always, held its balance. While Zinla rose higher each week, Mandla sank further. He lost his apartment. His landlord gave him 2 days to leave after months without rent. He packed what little he had left into 2 bags and moved into a cramped room in a decaying boarding house. The walls were thin. The mattress sagged. The single window faced a brick wall. Every night, he lay awake staring at the ceiling, haunted by memories of the life he once lived, of the woman he once shared a home with. He avoided social media now. Every time he opened his phone, something reminded him of her. Her face in a headline, her speech going viral, her announcement of a new medical facility being built, her being honored at a charity gala. She was everywhere. He was nowhere. One bleak afternoon, after another humiliating job rejection, his resume now overshadowed by his public reputation, he walked past a cafe with a large television in the window. A local news segment was airing. Curious customers gathered around the screen. On it, Zinla stood at a podium, smiling gracefully as she accepted an award for her humanitarian contributions. She wore a flowing, elegant gown, her posture tall, her presence magnetic. A man in the crowd murmured, "She's incredible, so inspiring." Another said, "Her husband must be the luckiest man alive." Mandla felt the blood drain from his face. Without realizing it, he took a step forward, unable to look away from the screen. She was dazzling. She was whole. She was everything he had tried to break and failed. He walked away trembling, nausea twisting his stomach. He felt as though the universe itself was punishing him, forcing him to witness her greatness while he drowned in the consequences of his cruelty. One night, after drinking enough to numb his shame, he stumbled outside and stared up at the sky. Tears blurred his vision as he whispered, "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." But apologies given to empty air never reached their intended hearts. Back in her world, Zinla was entering a new stage of healing, emotional closure. Her therapists encouraged her to explore the lingering scars of the marriage. There were moments in sessions when she cried softly, remembering how small he had made her feel. But the tears no longer came from grief. They came from release. "I believed I needed him," she admitted one day. "I believed my worth depended on his approval." "And now?" her therapist asked gently. She smiled faintly. "Now I know my worth was never his to measure." Her therapist nodded proudly. "That is growth." On weekends, she joined private social gatherings arranged by her father's esteemed friends. At first, she felt out of place, still adjusting to her new role. But people were drawn to her genuine humility, her quiet intelligence, her kindness. At one event, a gentleman in a dark suit approached her. He introduced himself politely, spoke with warmth, and admired her philanthropic work. Others encouraged her to socialize, explore companionship again, but she wasn't ready. And she didn't feel pressured, her father reassured her. A queen does not rush into choosing a king. She waits until someone proves worthy. She smiled. "For now, I choose myself." The newspapers soon ran headlines about her recovery progress, how she was seen walking with less support, how she exuded confidence everywhere she went. Every image captured her transformation. Not revenge, not triumph over an ex-husband, but the story of a woman who rebuilt herself from the ruins. She became an icon for strength, for dignity, for resilience. One quiet evening, as her physiotherapist watched her walk the length of the garden without her cane, he clapped softly. "You've exceeded everyone's expectations," she exhaled shakily, tears gathering in her eyes, though she tried to hide them. "It feels unreal." "It's real," he said warmly. "You did this." Her father stepped forward, witnessing the moment with overwhelming pride. "Your mother would be smiling." Zinla smiled through her tears. "I feel her with me." Together, they stood in the garden as the sun set an image of healing, of rebirth, of a future finally unfolding as it was meant to. And though she didn't know it, far across the city, Mandla sat alone in the dim corner of a shelter, his body hunched, his spirit crushed. Whispering her name like a prayer, he no longer had the right to speak. Their destinies had diverged completely, one ascending, the other crumbling. And fate was not done with either of them. Time has a way of revealing what pride tries to hide. As months passed, the contrast between Zinla's flourishing life and Mandla's unraveling existence widened into a chasm so vast that it seemed impossible they had once lived under the same roof, shared the same meals, spoken the same vows. Their worlds no longer intersected, not even by accident. But fate, in its subtle, intricate design, arranged one final encounter. It happened on a warm afternoon as Zinla prepared to visit one of the rehabilitation centers funded by her mobility initiative. Her role had expanded from corporate strategy to direct involvement in the charitable programs she championed. This particular center was dear to her. It specialized in patients recovering from injuries similar to hers. She felt connected to their struggles, their triumphs, their quiet fears. She traveled with her father's driver and two of her foundation managers. The car glided through the city, tinted windows shielding her from public gaze. She reviewed documents on her tablet, occasionally glancing outside at the bustling streets she once navigated unnoticed. As they approached the district where the center was located, traffic slowed. The area was older, worn by time, dotted with street vendors and struggling businesses. People on the sidewalks moved with urgency, children running, elders resting under awnings, men repairing broken bikes. Then, suddenly, the car came to a stop. The driver leaned back. "There's a blockage ahead, ma'am. Someone's collapsed in the road." Zinla looked up instinctively. A small crowd had gathered near the curb. People murmured anxiously. A man lay slumped beside a bus stop, thin, disheveled, clothes dirty and torn. One of his shoes was missing. His hands trembled as he tried to sit up. But exhaustion pulled him back down. Zinla felt a tug in her chest. "Should we take another route?" one manager asked. Zinla's voice softened. "No. Let's see if he needs help." Helping strangers had become second nature to her. But as she stepped out of the car and approached, guided by compassion rather than caution, she felt something shift in the air. A woman knelt beside the man, tapping his shoulder. "Sir, sir, can you hear me?" The man groaned weakly, turning his head, and then Zinla saw his face. Her breath caught, the world tilted, her cane clattered to the ground. It was Mandla, but not the Mandla she remembered. This version looked hollow, thin, unshaven, eyes sunken, cheeks gaunt. His once expensive suit was filthy, its fabric fraying at the seams. His hair was tangled, his lips cracked. He looked like a man who had walked through a storm that never ended. Her heart stuttered painfully. "Mandla," she whispered. The sound of his name spoken with genuine shock reached him like a distant echo. His eyes fluttered open. For a moment, he didn't recognize her. Then reality snapped into focus. He blinked hard, disbelief flooding through him. Zinhei. She took a slow, trembling breath. What? What happened to you?" Tears welled in Mandla's eyes, carving paths through the dirt on his face. He tried to look away, ashamed. "You shouldn't see me like this." Her manager approached carefully. "Ma'am, should we call emergency services?" "Yes," she said softly, though her eyes never left Mandla. "Please do." The manager stepped away to make the call. Mandla swallowed hard, voice breaking. "I don't deserve your help." Zinla crouched slowly, not because she had to anymore, but because she refused to tower over him. "No one deserves to be left like this, not even someone who hurt me." Mandla covered his face as tears poured out, shoulders shaking uncontrollably. "I failed," he choked. "I failed at everything. I lost my job, my home, everything I was, everything I thought mattered. And Ayanda, she left. Everyone left." "You left yourself," Zinla whispered gently. He sobbed harder. "I'm so sorry," he said. "Every day, I wake up, wishing I could undo what I did to you. Every night, I see your face in my dreams. The pain in your eyes, the way you walked away because of me." She felt her throat tighten. "Mandla, I forgave you long ago, but I can't forgive myself," he whispered, trembling. "I destroyed my own life, the moment I destroyed yours." She inhaled slowly, the ache of the moment stretching deep inside her. "You didn't destroy my life. You only delayed my rise." He looked up at her through tears, astonished. "How are you?" "Still kind." "Because being cruel would only tie me to the past," she replied, "and I chose to move forward." An ambulance siren echoed faintly in the distance. He lowered his head, crying harder. "I don't deserve your kindness. Kindness isn't given because someone deserves it," she said softly. "It's given because it frees the giver." "Mandla," she continued, her voice calm. "This is your second chance, not with me, but with yourself. Take it." He shook his head weakly. "I don't know where to start." "You start," she said, "by standing up from the place you fell." 2 paramedics arrived and knelt beside him, checking his vitals. As they lifted him carefully onto a stretcher, Mandla reached out with a trembling hand. "Zinla, thank you for seeing me, for not looking away." She held his hand firmly for a moment. "Take care of yourself, Mandla. For what it's worth," he whispered, voice fading. "You were the best thing that ever happened to me, and I ruined it." A tear slid down her cheek, not for him, not for the marriage, but for the human tragedy of a man who finally understood the lesson too late. The paramedics lifted him into the ambulance. The doors closed. The siren wailed. Zinla stood in silence long after the ambulance drove away. The world around her kept moving, cars honking, vendors selling fruit, children laughing, but she felt suspended in a bubble of reflection. She did not feel guilt. She did not feel anger. She felt closure. True, profound closure. When she returned to the car, her manager asked softly, "Are you all right, ma'am?" She nodded. "Yes, I am." And she meant it. They arrived at the rehabilitation center, where dozens of patients greeted her with smiles, hope shining in their eyes. As she toured the rooms, offering encouragement, shaking hands, and sharing stories, she felt a deep sense of purpose settle in her heart. Her journey was no longer defined by Mandla's cruelty. It was defined by her resilience, her courage, her compassion. When she addressed the center's staff at the end of the visit, her words came from a place strengthened by what she had just witnessed. "Our wounds do not define us," she said. "What defines us is how we rise from them, how we choose to live, how we choose to heal, not just physically, but emotionally. Healing is not the absence of pain. It is the reclaiming of power." Applause filled the room. Later that night, as she stood before the mirror in her new home, a penthouse overlooking the entire city, she caught her reflection, smiling softly. Her leg felt stronger, her heart felt lighter, her future felt open. She whispered quietly, "I made it." And somewhere far away, in a small hospital ward, Mandla lay staring at the ceiling, broken, humbled, repentant, knowing that the woman he once tried to crush had not only risen, she had ascended. She had become untouchable. She had become who she was always meant to be.